Welcome back, and we're here to talk today about Lepic. Obviously, there's been a lot of changes in the game, and we've added the arcade tuning. We've added a lot of other elements into the game with the different weapon builds and things that can go on. So I just thought it was time to revisit all of our builds, and so we're starting this series now. We'll go ahead and dive into a few different builds for Lepic, so we'll split those up and I'll try to mark those for you so you don't have to watch the whole thing. If you want to look at one thing or another, you can search for it. We're going to talk about a boss build, we're going to talk about a mobbing build, and we're going to talk about a purge build. We'll start off with that purge build since it's really the new build, and we'll go from there. Let's dive on in here and look at his base stats. We'll go ahead and hold W there to get them up. And so what I'm normally looking at here is kind of getting some direction when I'm starting a build on whether this character can crit or not. What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? In this particular case, we can definitely get some crit hits here. So we do need to focus on getting that critical hit rate and critical hit damage up as high as we can. You can see from this that our critical hit rate here is 15% and our critical hit damage is 1.3%. So in this particular case, we've got to decide, what it is that we're going to be building into. And for the purge build, we're not really focusing on that crit. So we're going to focus on some other things. We'll talk about that. When we get into his bossing builds, we will care about that. But I do like to take a look real quickly before I start doing any kind of building at what his base looks like. So we have, in this particular case, because of the mods, we've taken a bit of a hit to skill power because, as I mentioned, we're not really focusing on that for this particular one. We are a fire descendant. We are focusing on tech skills. We have MP as a concern. We have skill power as a concern normally. So these are where we start from. Now let's take a look at what the choices are that we've done when we look at the Descendant modules. In this particular case, what we are focusing on is being more of a support character, drawing all the enemies together for the purge so that people can, focus fire in one direction rather than having to spread themselves out all over the map. This gives it a much better targeted approach to killing the enemies and makes it fun to play him. You're just basically throwing his third ability out, and then you can spam his grenades at that point. They've made the grenades very relevant in the game at this stage. And then obviously, you can use weapons, which we'll get into at the later stages here. I am using power unit changes. Overclock no longer increases skill power. It increases firearm ATK instead. This is really good for mobbing. This is really good for this particular situation. So we're not using our skills, and that's why we didn't really focus on crit so much. This changes the way you have to modify his build. You're going to spend a lot more as far as your crystallization catalyst, you have to crystallize some more slots in order to veer off in this direction, but it makes him very relevant. You can see from the gameplay that we're rolling now that we're able to continuously get our third ability out there. We have the third ability on a cooldown so that it's 5.4 seconds. The duration is about 4 seconds, so we're almost able to continuously throw it, and certainly we throw it, they're still grouped together, so we're able to continue to take advantage of what the impact of that third ability has been as we get that traction grenade out there. So this makes it very relevant, and I think we are able to continually spam this and continually get the damage. So what are we focusing on here? Well, obviously we want to be able to keep the duration and the cooldown as a focus. So we are using nimble fingers. We are also using focus mods. This focus on fire obviously gives us a bit more strength. We're not really worried about that so much, but the cooldown is what we're worried about. MP conversion gives us further cooldown, and then obviously we've got focus on tech here as well. That's giving us that extra cooldown. The next thing we want is, both duration, and again, don't care about skill power, and then we want range. So we're looking at maximum duration, amplification control, skill extension, skill expansion, and then just from extra health, we've got battle of stamina here along with some increased HP. So the build's really simple. We're focusing on duration, and we're focusing on cooldown, and we're focusing on range so that we can suck everything in. And when we look at this ability, we can boost it up to 300%. 300% would be 27 meters, 9 times 3 obviously. We're not quite there, but we're good enough. We could go crazy and get a little bit more range out of it if we wanted to. We could go with maximized range, and that's certainly an option for you if you want to go in that route. I've just chosen to get a little bit more shield, but certainly, as you can see, maximized range would be a good play. And then if you put that in there, then you're going to end up with somewhere well, I gotta save it first. Let's save it. There we go. Then you're going to end up with that 27 meters. So you can get that max range, you can get that duration, extension there, and that's going to give you a lot more comfortable runs in the purge, being able to group all those guys together. That kind of it immobilizes them. They're not shooting at you as much, so this gives you a clearer path if you're focusing with some gun descendants like some glaze going through there. So exciting build again. Here it is without any of the interruptions of the nice clean plate for you to look at. And then we'll go from there. So the other choices that we make here are going to be, first let's jump into arcade tuning. So in this particular case, because we're not using our skills, we're focusing mainly on weapons. We're going for, the standard things, critical hit damage, critical hit rate for the weapons. We're going for, being able to really punish the enemies. So and that is pretty straightforward. I don't think there's any other discussion needed there. As far as fellows concerned, we are wanting ammo, so we are looking instead of health, we're looking for some ammo. So we are using the Vesper's hunting dog for that case, getting our Labrador out there. And then inversion reinforcement wise, you've got choices here. You want to use whatever. In this particular case, we might be going for chill, so we would switch over to chill. We're not going to be in the air, so we might go for the cutting mechanism for the weapon that we have chosen. And then this top one, it's really kind of up to you whether you want critical hit. I think critical hit reloads, makes you reload quicker, so this is an effective one for him in this particular case. So that would be the inversion reinforcement choices. We'll just go ahead and get rid of this camera before we start talking about reactors. So with the reactor here, we are using the burner mechanic reactor. Obviously skill damage isn't really a big issue here. We're not really worried about the skill, but we're going to get some. So we'll make our grenades a little bit more powerful. We're using that because his skills are tech and fire. So if you look at the boosts that we get there, if we go back at the modules real quickly, you see that the grenade is tech and his fourth ability is tech. So the grenade is tech and the fourth ability is tech, and this is why we're going after that particular reactor. Skill effect range and skill duration up are what we're going for here. And again, this just gets us to that max value that we were looking at earlier. And so, we want as much duration as we can, and we want as much range as we can. So those are the choices there. I mean, there's certainly other ones. If you want a little bit more power out of it, you could go with, the skill power ones. But again, we're focusing more on being able to group those enemies together, and we're not really using the skills that much. We're going to be diving into the weapons considerably. Now, we've made some interesting choices here when it comes to the component sets. We're using the annihilation set to get that duration up as much as we can. So we get a 2-set bonus there. In this particular case, he is an MP hungry, descendant. So we've got MP recovery out of combat and max HP, max MP, and MP recovery in combat. So these two are important for him. Obviously, the more MP he gets, the more he can throw his skills out, and being able to get it back is important. And then for the other set, we have a hunter memory set with max shield. But here we're going for cooldown, right? So we want defense, MP recovery in combat. There's some other roles we could take here. The MP recovery in combat's the main one that we're interested in. And then on the next one that we've got the max HP, shield recovery, and max shield. This is obviously the best we could hope for in this particular case. So again, we're going for the cooldown in the second set, and we're going for the duration in the other set. You could go some other directions. Certainly if you want to get a little bit more powerful, you could go with the Slayer set. But what we're looking at here is being able to get that ability out as much as we can. Moving over to the weapons, we've gone into considerable discussion about Malevolent before, so I won't dive into that. There's some other videos that we have out where you can take a look at that. Malevolent is certainly a good choice here. When we were able to, basically use whichever version of it that we want. We can go with a chill, or we can bring it down to fire, or we can go with different choices there. But I think in this particular case with the level 30, we're looking at the chill, and this is really the best option for him in this mobbing scenario. Certainly, you could go with other options. Albion Cavalry, depending on how the other characters are arranged, might be a good choice. It allows you to stun everything. And then when we get the opportunity, Smithereens can just smash those enemies. So this is what I normally run with. As far as the builds are concerned for each of these weapons, I'll just click on them one more time so you can see what we're looking at build wise. From there, we will move forward and talk about the next build. So let's take a look at these different weapon builds for the purge. Here we go. And you could lean more into the chill here, but in this particular case, I'm just going for overall damage. The damage. So that's all we've got for this particular build. let's dive on over here and talk about some of the other builds, and we'll go from there. So let's dive in here and talk about the mods for this mobbing build. Increased efficiency is the Transcendent mod that we're using, and as you saw from the changes that they made during the balancing recently, this is now firing very quickly. Matter of fact, it's firing fast enough now that you really have to look out for your MP more than anything else. I think this is the only concern. You want to watch, make sure that you're getting kills. If you're getting kills, then you're going to get your MP back, and then you'll be in good shape. So increased efficiency is definitely the play. And what we're focusing on here is just, sheer damage in this particular case. We do have, fire specialists, so we can get more skill power out of there. We're getting skill insight, so we can get that critical hit rate up as much as we can, get those critical hit damage popping off. Again, he is a critical hit rate. He's got a base of 15. We can get that on all the way up to 50, which we do when we're talking about our bossing build. Emergency measures gives us some additional critical hit rate to build on there. MP collector in some cases is broken, it seems, but for this and the 400% content, I didn't really notice a problem. So I think from a mobbing point of view, it's okay. MP conversion giving us some skill cooldown. This is more for his other abilities than it is for his fourth ability, because it just stays up. So you could opt to go away from using MP conversion and go with something that's going to give him a bit more maybe power, maybe you get some, some damage out of that. Front lines giving us critical hit damage and skill critical hit rate. And then skill power modifier here with skill simplification, and then amplification control giving us some additional range. And range is something we want, right? We want that explosion to be as big as we can. So we are doing skill expansion as well. And then some increased HP for some additional health. So if I was going to change something here, it might be focusing on the cooldown. Now, occasionally you lose your ability because you run out of MP. So I kind of like having it here. But you could, in this particular case, go with, skill concentration, for instance, and get some additional critical hit damage out of it. Pop that in there. I don't think I have any. Let's see where I could put it. Can I put it anywhere? Why? So we'd have to catalyze it again. It looks like, I think, yeah, we'd have to catalyze it again. So you could catalyze it again and then, go with skill concentration. But I find this to be a little bit more comfortable because occasionally I do run out of, let's go back to the skills real quick, to those mods real quick. Occasionally I do run out of MP, and this causes a problem. So let's take a look at the other choices that we've made, and we'll go from there. Let's talk about the arcade tuning real quick. So the things that we're focusing on here is getting as much max MP as we can, along with trying to get as much critical hit rate and critical hit damage. So we've got the critical hit damage enhancement and the critical hit rate enhancement. We are getting some additional duration. This is really for that burn from his second ability. We are looking at some reduced skill costs, so we don't use up as much MP when we're popping our abilities. We're focusing on getting enhanced skill power and MP as much as possible. So this enhanced skill power ultimate is important, along with the range. So this just gets us, makes it a little bit more comfortable as far as the range is concerned. So these are the key elements that you want to focus on when it comes to the arcade tuning. As far as fellows are concerned, we're staying here with our sheepdog. We're getting our health back because we're not really using our ammo that much. So this is the choice that we chose for that. As far as the inversion reinforcement is concerned, we probably want to switch things up a bit. I would say we go away from the ammo system and go to the neutral focus augmentation. When defeating an enemy grants neutral focus augmentation, which gives us max MP plus 8.8% for 30 seconds up to 5 stacks. So a little bit extra MP isn't a bad thing for him. Attribute wise, it just depends on what it is you're going up against. We've left it at chill here at the moment. And then we're using the evolutionary cutting mechanism. So this is a good choice. We could, get a little bit more speed out of him. So for this particular build, getting some speed in here would be good. So by defeating an enemy grants adrenaline rush. This will make us move a little faster. So these will be good choices for him in this particular case. There's other choices. So, explore around, find what works for you. We've talked about everything there. Let's jump on into the reactor here. So reactor wise, we are using a different reactor from what we used before. Here we're using fire skill and tech skill, a little boost to fire and skill cooldown here. Again, the skill cooldown is probably not the best one. We could look at some better rolls here for this particular case. Maybe we're looking at duration. That would get our second abilities burn lasting longer. We could go with range. We could really just go with a tech boost. So any of these would be good choices. But he is fire and tech, so this is the way to go, and obviously we're using his fourth ability, which is a tech skill. Let's talk about the components. No surprise here, we are using the Slayer set, and regrettably I don't have the best Slayer set when it comes to his abilities. We've got max HP and MP recovery out of combat. These are the best rolls there. The reason we're using this set is because it does give us more general rounds, but more importantly, it's giving us a boost to skill power down there at the bottom, plus 26.1%. And then when defeating enemies inflicted with Toad, which is his ability that he has, thrown out there, third ability, recovers MP and specialized resource by 12.2% and 17% chance. So this is a very effective way for him to get some more resources out there, and that's not a bad thing. So let's talk about his sensor. On his sensor, we want max MP. That would be ideal. But in this particular case, because we're mobbing, we're more concerned about recovery. So MP recovery in combat is important to us. Max MP is not as important. Now, when we come to the bossing build, we would switch this up and sacrifice that MP recovery in combat for something else. But in this particular case, we are going to run with something that gives us a little less max MP. But if we were in the perfect world, that would be maxed out as well. Looking at his memory, we're looking at MP recovery modifier, and again, as much MP as we can get this guy, the better. And then defense, and then on the last piece, we've got max shield and shield recovery modifier. I think this is probably the best roll we can hope for here in terms of what's rolled on it. So good choices. As far as weapons are concerned, you've got choices. I mean, I don't think it really makes that much of a difference. You're running around. The one thing that we would want here is with that, whatever it is to be able to have fire rate. So it is important that you're modding it with fire rate up. That is going to impact his fourth ability. So having fire rate up or fire rate on the weapon is going to be helpful in getting that going a little bit quicker as far as his fourth ability. But these are the same builds that I've used before, and again, you can switch it up. If you're using him with fire, you could certainly go with fire enhancement, and there's a lot of other choices here when it comes to these weapons. I'm just using them because of their abilities with him. So fire is something that you want to lean into heavily with Lepic, just like you would with any other fire descendant. I think that about sums up his mobbing build. Let's move on over to his other build, the bossing build. We'll apply that one in there, and we'll go in and look at it. We'll jump on into the modules first. Obviously, we are using Firearm Master. When reloading a weapon, increases skill range, changing weapon increases skill power. So you do want to make sure when you're bossing that if you're really wanting the most bang for your buck, make sure you reload that weapon, your primary weapon, just before you start off on doing the damage. But as you can see from the gameplay that we're rolling now, he is able to boss very effectively. It doesn't really have to take this particular step to do the damage, but it does boost it. So if you're really looking for max value, that's what you do. Now, what this mod does just gives us a little bit more skill power. But as we talked about before, what we're looking at doing here is pounding them away with our fourth ability. Our fourth ability, what we want to make sure that we're doing there is getting as much boost from it as we can, as much damage as we can from it. You can see we're taking a little bit of skill power hit, and we'll talk about why. But our focus here is on critical hit rate and critical hit damage, along with duration. Our goal here is to get as many shots off as we can, and we're getting around 17. You can get up to 18, maybe more, I'm not sure, but at the moment, he has plenty. Radius is helpful because it just helps you, keep the enemy in that range. But I think the most important thing here is getting your crit hit rate up as much as possible so that it does crit. Because when it does crit, then you're definitely going to kill that boss. If it doesn't crit, sometimes the boss will go into their invulnerability stage, and you'll have to cycle through that a bit. It can be a bit annoying. Range, we can get the range up, but I think for mobbing, range would be important, but for bossing, it's not as important. It's more important than it be powerful. Let's talk about some of the choices that we've made in order to make it as powerful as possible. So the first thing, obviously, is skill concentration. We're getting a critical hit rate, critical hit damage up as high as possible. So that is one of our focuses. We're using front lines as well for crit hit damage and skill critical hit rate. So that's a nice boost there as well. We are using emergency measures for additional crit hit rate and crit hit damage, and so that's another boost there. And then we're using tech specialist for our skill power modifier. So all this is just to pound as much as we can into the skill power and the crit hit damage, right? We're using frugal mindset. This reduces our skill cost. This is going to give us a little bit of range, but the main thing here we're going for is making sure that we get as many fireballs off as possible. And then duration will also make that 4 skill last longer, so we get more pounding in there. We are taking a little bit of hit to skill power, but the duration is more important. Skill extension, just that duration, keeping us going. So this makes that 4th skill pop and last as long, getting us, that 17th shot, and some cases 18, depending on how things are hitting. So these are the choices that we've made from that standpoint. We are using dangerous ambush, because when the enemy does get down on their knees, then we do get that additional boost to the skill power up to 49.8%, and this just wrecks them, as you can see from the video footage that we've rolled earlier. So there's some other choices that you could do. You could lean more into crit hit rate just to make sure that you go ahead and crit, but I think what I'm seeing is really comfortable here, and I do use Lepic every now and then for bossing. If you wanted to, get a for sure crit, then you could go in that direction. But it seems pretty comfortable for this. I don't really see a need to move away from it. So those are my recommendations. I think we've covered everything. Battle of stamina just for additional HP and that duration. Again, these choices are all about either duration or crit hit rate and crit hit damage. So here it is without any interruption or anything hovering over it. We'll go from here on into talking about some of the other choices that we make in putting this build together. So as far as RK tuning is concerned, in this particular case, it is skill we're going for, and the main thing we're wanting here is crit hit damage and crit hit rate. We're not really concerned about the cooldown. That's not really an impact for us, so we are using the same one that we used before, focusing on enhancing the skill power, focusing on getting the skill cost down as much as possible, getting a bit of range out of that as well. So these are kind of the main choices there: duration, crit hit, and then just MP as a general maximum. So this is the choice. We could go, if we were going to be more using weapons, we could go more in a weapon direction, but in this particular case, we're focusing more on his 4th ability. So those are the choices there. Popped out of that screen. As far as fellows concerned, we're looking at health. So having the hunting dog or the lab around is going to be very helpful for us to get that health back. Not really worried about ammo in this particular case. And then reinforcement wise, I think some of the choices that we made here are still good. We're looking at trying to get max MP, so if we defeat any of those little enemies that help the boss, then that's going to give us that. We could focus on whatever rounds for the enemy that we're fighting. That would be important. And then in this case, I think speed is probably our best option here, but there's other options. You could go crazy with it, folks. I mean, the reason I pick speed is because when you use his 4th ability, it does sometimes slow you down, particularly if you're popping the 2nd and the 4th ability. So this gives you just a little bit more movement in that particular case. Let's talk again, and I'll get rid of that camera one more time. About the reactor. Again, we're using a reactor now that boosts Colossus. It keeps our skill duration up as much as possible. So these are the main things here. We are fire tech. We are still using his tech ability. So you could, instead of duration, you could go with tech, or you could go with crit hit rate, or you could go with crit hit damage. So there's some different options here that might give you different results, but I've found this very comfortable. I am using the hand cannon. We'll talk about why here in a second, but there are some other, other choices there as well. In terms of the external components, again, we're using the Slayer set, focusing on getting as much MP as we can. And in this particular case, we are going to need to switch things around. So we'll talk about what we've done there. And the first one, I think max HP and MP recovery out of combat are the best choices. When it comes to the second one, you've got better rolls out there. The main thing here you want is max MP. After max MP, you'd rather have MP recovery, not HP recovery. So what you'd be looking for is MP recovery and max MP being both ultimate rolls as high as possible. And then when it looks at the next one here, MP recovery modifier is the important one. There's some other choices there. It depends on your comfort level. I like defense. I think it gives him a little bit more staying power and health, so that's not a bad roll. And then on the last one, you just want shield and shield recovery. So these are the two definitely are the best options. So for that, let's jump on over here and talk about the weapons. There are some important things when it comes to the weapons. I am using Zester's Devotion. There's some other ones that you might use. The important thing here is it being a special impact round weapon, right? So this is a critical part. The impact round weapon makes it where you're going to get your fire rate up faster because it's cycling every 0.4 seconds. Some of the other weapons, it might be 0.5 seconds. So that makes it a little bit slower getting up to those 10 stacks. What this allows is as you're firing, your fire rate starts off a little slower, but then it just picks up and picks up and picks up, and he just gets a lot more shots off. So this is very helpful in using his fourth ability. The important thing here is you just hold that fourth ability down and let it cycle through and really speed up. So this gun is focusing on fire rate and the sharp precision shot primarily for that purpose, right? Obviously you want expanded weapon charge, and this is a good choice weapon wise for bossing in general, because if you get some weak point hits with it before you start doing all this, then you're going to get a benefit from that as well, because you're going to reduce their resistance. So this is the first and main. I'm going to really just run around with this. I do carry the enduring legacy around, and you could choose any different variant of it that you want. I carry it around as well, just in this particular case, so that we can have something to damage the boss with. It's a good high critical hit rate, critical hit damage weapon. It's a good choice for that. And then Secret Garden, because he's a fire descendant, we're using it, and again, we can use whichever variation of it you want. And then the focus here is just on its synergy with fire descendants. So that about wraps up the weapons, and quite frankly wraps up the build. Thank you for watching, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the next one. If you've made it this far, thank you for watching. We are not currently a monetized channel, so any likes, subscribes, and comments are greatly appreciated. If you'd like to support us further, you can go on in the Nexon site, because we are a Nexon creator, and you can support us there by using this creator code. This will support us greatly, so thank you again for that. If you'd like to support us even further, you could go down below. It's one of the links below. You'll find the Humble Bundle link that will take you to some discounted games. That discount will be applied. We will get credit for the sale, but we don't affect the price of any of those games when you do that. Otherwise, thank you again for watching, and we will see you in the next one.